is up, everyone? Welcome to Internet Explorers, our weekly rundown show where we talk about all the weird, wild, fun shit that's been happening in the week of consumer crypto. It's getting increasingly chaotic, as you can tell by this stacked list of topics I have here. You can also tell that Jess is not with us today. He's running around FWB Fest. Shout out everyone that's there. Everyone that's at base camp looks sick. So we have Nicholas with us today. Nicholas, what's up, man?
Not much. How's it going, Josh?
Do well. Do you want to? I mean, I think
excited to be here. I
people
should have worn a fake beard.
You should have. That would
next
be
time.
sick.
Next time.
That would be sick. I think people are probably familiar with you, Nicholas, with all the ends.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, maybe do you want to kind of give a quick background on just what you've done, who you are? And I also don't think we've been overly public that you've recently joined Seed Club.
Yes, joined Seed Club. I guess it's been about a week and a half, 2 weeks now. So I'm going to be joining Seed Club to work on some projects. Previously, I worked on a bunch of different things. Juicebox.money, used to work at Juicebox Protocol, doing DevRel, experiments with the protocol, governance and operations kind of stuff for the DAO. Also run a podcast, web3galaxybrain.com, which has been going for over 2 years now. Lots of interviews with devs. Write Solidity, do product stuff, design. So yeah, excited to be joining Seed Club and excited to be here today for Internet Explorers. My first time on Internet Explorers. So looking forward to talking to Sam and everybody. Yeah, for sure. I think you have this unique ability to have technical conversations, but make it pretty accessible to the non-technical among us. And I think that'll be very useful as we bring Sam up. Definitely excited about it. Yeah. Pete, how you doing today?
Insanely good. I'm running like 100 windows here trying to get this chat rolling. I'm gonna let people hear. On Twitter, I've got tomatoes and cottage cheese. Life is good. And we've got Sam from Arweave on. Yeah.
Arweave. So I'm really excited to talk to Sam. I loaded up the topics. I'm not going to run through them all. Jess is a rambly man. We don't have the rambly man here today, so added more topics than we can probably get through just to be safe. But yeah, let's jump right into it. Let's bring Sam up.
Dope.
Hey guys, great to see you.
What's up, man? Sam? Great to see you as well. Do you guys know each other? Have you guys chatted before?
A little bit on Twitter, maybe back in the day, a long time ago.
Right. I feel like I remember Nicholas with all of the ends.
That's it.
NFT Space 21, something like that.
Exactly.
Love it.
It's good to see you in person.
Likewise.
Yeah, Sam, excited to have you here. I think Arweave has just been a mainstay of the crypto space for the last 6-7 years since you launched it. Really excited to kind of have more of like a consumer focused conversation around it. I think recently you guys launched AO as well, which I'm excited to get into. I think this concept of like the perma web concept of kind of content, not apps. Excited to get into all of that. But maybe to kick things off, do you want to just kind of give a quick background, maybe kind of touch on the initial insights that you started Arweave on, what Arweave is, and then maybe quick reflection on kind of the last 7 years building it, and then we can kind of jump off from there.
All right, cool. Okay, so Arweave, if you're in the crypto space, can be best understood as on-chain storage at arbitrary scale, basically. So we take that idea that you have with inscriptions and the likes on Bitcoin, but just scale it up so that you can fit a whole web inside. We started, down that path because we wanted to build an irrevocable, uncensorable archive of human history and knowledge. Basically, we wanted to. We saw that the blockchains were this replicated data structure, right? That puts the information in so many places that no single government, group, or individual could possibly remove it. We thought that was really cool. And people were experimenting with embedding bits of data in Bitcoin since pretty close to the beginning. There were all sorts of experiments, 2011, that type of time. It took a while to reach the mainstream of crypto, that use case. But it was there, and we thought it was an interesting idea, and we were like, okay, well, can we scale it up so that you can fit arbitrary amounts of data inside the system? And we really wanted to make an archive mostly of newspaper articles to begin with, right? That is how, at least in the old world, how history was recorded, right? How we reported on the things that happened to us as a group. And the only real deviation in the in the path was just like 6 months after launch, which was 5.5 years ago now, or 6 months since, sorry, 6 years since the launch. When we realized that, like, okay, so the natural thing to do here is to archive web pages, like a decentralized version of the Internet Archive. But if you're storing web pages, like, why do they have to be backups? Like, why can't they be in a primary publication? And then we came up with basically the idea of the permaweb. And the key insight there was, well, applications too are essentially just data at some point. Or like the vast majority of what makes up a web application is really just data. Like at some point it's just code, but you animate it with compute. And so we've been following down that path of building basically a permanent decentralized web that imbues web applications with the same properties you would expect from a blockchain. So as soon as the application is published, you can access it permanently. No one can take it away from you. Its code just runs. And yeah, you get the typical guarantees. You can then access it through many different places. It doesn't exist in any physical location. Like something I think you guys, I'm curious what you think about this, but in the Declaration of Independence of Cyberspace, John Perry Barlow, he says, in like very, very emotive languages, but basically that the governments as they currently exist have no jurisdiction, have no presence here. We exist outside of your borders. But that wasn't, it felt like that in the early days of the internet, but it wasn't truly correct because all of the protocols of the internet forced everything to have like a physical location. When you access Facebook, it looks like you're in cyberspace, right? But ultimately you're going to a specific server and location. And so we essentially saw the opportunity to build web applications that are outside of that. So a fully decentralized, borderless cyberspace. And we've been following down that track. And recently we built this machine on top of it called AO, which essentially takes that idea that computing services, like stuff that you wouldn't normally think of as data, really is just data underneath, but you need a verifiable log of all the interactions on that program in order to sort of animate it, make it live. And so we had, before this I was working, doing a PhD in distributed operating system design. I had a pretty deep background in that area. And we saw that there was this architecture called message passing, rather than global shared state, that is totally common. It's like the normal way of doing everything in the centralized space, but no one had actually applied it to blockchains effectively yet. And because basically we were trying to build this consumer crypto app, actually, bringing Odyssey, this, you guys are familiar with it. It's like Web3 video sharing platform, 7-8 million monthly active users. Yeah, we're bringing that over to Arweave, and we wanted to be able to support people trading content at any scale. And just none of the existing smart contract platforms could get close to that. Like even Solana or something, which is pretty scalable in one sense, it won't do like, real-time order books for every piece of content on the internet traded mostly by bots, which is how we anticipate that it will work. And so we just built out the rest of this architecture, launched it in February, and the reception to it has been like incredible. We had really no expectation that people would get it so quickly. And so yeah, that's the journey so far, I guess.
That's awesome.
I'm really curious.
Go Nick.
Yeah, I had a couple questions. The first one was, Arweave, it's like, I guess the base premise is pay once, stored for at least 200 years, something like forever. Can you explain a little bit about how you can make that kind of promise, just for people who maybe aren't so technical but want to understand? Can they really trust such a promise?
Yeah, well, for a start, it's not a promise. Like the whole point is it's a protocol that has a transparent monetary policy. And so no one's promising you anything, but you can go audit it yourself and see how it works. And I can explain to you how it works, but then you can choose for yourself whether you choose to trust it. Like we don't think, how Arweave works is a storage endowment, but we don't think a storage endowment would be possible to be offered by a centralized organization because inherently you would have to trust the managers of that endowment over time. But basically, this is how it works, and you can choose whether you trust it. This is crypto; it's open and transparent. Okay, so you pay for 200 years worth of storage at the current price for 20 replicas when you put data into Arweave, Then over time, as the cost of storage declines, that 200 years expands out. And so you go from 200 years in day one, we'll say the cost of storage declined 10% in that year. Well, now, yes, 1 year has gone by, so you're 199, but you've actually gained 20 years, or some amortization of the, so it's slightly different, but you end up at approximately around 219 years. That's kind of interesting, right? And then as time goes on, as long as storage costs decline at a rate higher than 0.5% on average, then you end up with a runtime. Well, in that, you know, in physics, you ever had a friend that's like a physicist? They make all these jokes that are like, you know, imagining a perfect sphere in a vacuum, a perfect vacuum. And then they tell you something about physics. It's like, yeah, that's never going to happen.
Right.
But in that scenario, it runs just 200 years precisely of storage purchasing power for an arbitrary distance. Now, of course, in the real world, token prices change and this type of thing, and that's why there's like a 30 to 60x safety margin that we added on top just to make it like super, super conservative.
But essentially, people are able to claim this vesting deposited reward over time by proving that they continue to hold the data?
Yeah, exactly. So there's two sides of it. There's this economic mechanism, and then there's this proof of work mechanism, except it's proof of useful work. So you just prove that you have access to replication of the data set. And then there are incentives to make sure that you replicate the whole thing.
Because essentially, as it unfolds, you have to, in order to add data, you need to also be able to prove that you have some randomly selected prior data, or is that a separate mechanism?
It's just to create blocks. So in order to get the reward, but also while you do that, you would sync transactions because they pay you.
My big question about all this is that sounds great for storing it, but of course the real expense is in serving it. If you have some kind of video platform or something,
right?
Is that included in the economics of the model, or do you imagine some indexing services that charge on top of that, like APIs to access Ethereum, for example?
Yeah. So, okay, in the base protocol, like anyone can spin up an Arweave node, and there's a data trading system based on the optimistic tit for tat mechanism in BitTorrent. So like if you've joined a BitTorrent swarm, you basically know how Arweave distributes data to miners.
You get good downloading speed if you seed.
Yeah, but most people, and we modify that by like, you also get good distribution of transactions and blocks, which is really useful to miners. So they want to maintain that reputation. But if you are a user, you want to access it in a web browser, right? Like you don't want to have to go run a node in the background and all of this stuff. And so there's a network on top of Arweave. And this is why we call it the permaweb stack. Like Arweave is at the bottom, and then AO is a compute layer on top. But there's also a distribution layer called Ario. In fact, you're right next to a tweet of this. Okay, so this is Ario network. They basically have a system that incentivizes gateway operators to serve data and content to users. And there's about 250, 300 of these last time I checked. And what's kind of cool about this is they also have a naming system. So in fact, they're talking about it in this tweet. This is very helpful.
That's why we do it, Sam. That's why we do it.
Nice. All right. So basically the idea is that every gateway registers a domain. And then there's this ARNS naming system that runs underneath it, and they offer subdomains. And so you can buy a subdomain on AO, attach it to data on Arweave, and then you can have your site served from any number of gateways at that subdomain. So if you go to sam.ar.io, you'll see my personal site that I haven't updated for years. But you could also see that site if you went to sam.arweave.net or sam.arweave.dev or .gateway.io or any number of other gateways. And so you get this like portability and real decentralization of access to the web applications without having to install special software, which we think that like crypto consumer users, at least in the early phases, just aren't going to do.
So in short, there's like an AR tokenomic incentive economy on a layer of the stack above just the core storage that's incentivizing these gateways to operate.
Exactly. Yeah, and in the same way that AO itself is also an additional layer in the stack. It's all that's like the internet stack. Everything is kind of modular, and we try to build each piece so that it's the optimum version of what that thing should do, and then layer them on top rather than building some monolith where you make too many opinionated choices in one, and then everyone hates the whole thing, rather than being like, okay, well, if someone wanted a different type of CDN, they could build it and plug in on top of the same infrastructure.
Sam, what are some like defining examples you kind of point to really show like end users the power of this technology? I think like, Paragraph is one that I think I bump into the most often. It's just like, storing blogs and content on Arweave. But yeah, what are some others that kind of really would potentially unlock like the power of this in people's minds?
Yeah. So there's like Web 2.5 stuff. There's this, the way that we conceptualize it is that there's a sort of inner orbit, if you will, and an outer orbit. In the outer orbit, there's stuff like Paragraph, which is really cool. They're storing the data on Arweave. Same with Mirror, same with Lens. And I think there's also like uploaders of data from Nostra and Farcaster at this point, trying to build an aggregation of all of the social data. But they're really just like writers, and they're using Arweave for its permanent storage capabilities. And that's kind of the depth of it. The thing that our ecosystem, like the diehards you'll find, in fact, those elephants that liked your tweet the other day.
Plenty of them.
Yeah. What we're all really excited about is the idea of full perm web applications, like fully decentralized web applications, where it's not like you go to a domain that realistically is on the centralized web, and there's smart contracts perhaps, and then data stored on Arweave, and you're kind of like gluing it together. It's like you've got a decentralized engine and decentralized wheels, but the chassis is centralized. We're really excited about applications that are like fully perm web native, because then they give you this robust guarantee. Basically, once you've built them, they just continue running. The user essentially brings their infrastructure, so the developer doesn't run any services of their own. They just upload once to the network, and then the user has this relationship with the gateway that makes them animated into something that looks like a full web application. And a fun example of that might be like Llamaland or Dexy. Those are both like ARNS domains. You could just go to llamaland.ar.io or arweave.net. And it'll render for you. And basically, it's a fully on-chain world. So the idea is that we have basically protocolized MMOs, if you will. And people have built these, and there's actually a hackathon going on right now for like $30,000 of bounty in Arweave tokens, so it fluctuates, but 1,000 are. And people are building like worlds where, so the base one we created was to demo this idea of fully on-chain large language models. So large language models running inside a smart contract, which is something that AO can do. And basically, we put this little Llama King inside this little world, and you walk around it, and each one of your steps is actually an interaction on AO stored on Arweave, fully replicated. It's just a smart contract. And the UI is on Arweave. Like the whole stack is decentralized. And you can go talk to the Llama King, and you can send him like a plea. And you say, hey, please give me some Llama coins. And he runs the monetary policy of Llama Coin autonomously on his own. He's a LLM. It's like a fiat simulator meme coin, basically. But in this world, it's open and permissionless. So people can build bots that just sit in there and do stuff. And you can go talk to the bots there. It's like if anyone could build an NPC inside an MMO, something like that. And so people have been building like a way to go buy Llama coins. And in the background, it's interacting with the smart contracts on AO. But it looks and feels like the interface is like a communal experience. So if you log in, there's other people walking around, you have a chat, and you say like, what are you doing with Llama coin? And then, you just like converse. It's almost like a DeFi land, if you will.
I'm curious about this. So essentially the game, like the databases, the maps, the smart contracts for issuing and swapping the tokens all are all stored on Arweave. And then the AO level is sort of an execution layer that's sort of interpreting and running some kind of client based on the data that's on Arweave, but itself needs to be, as you say, kind of animated by some kind of runtime that AO provides?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's actually a pretty good synopsis of the AO architecture, at least parts of it. Basically, the idea is, it stems from the observation that you can't make global shared memory systems scale. They just don't scale. You would never do this in a centralized environment because everyone knows that they don't scale. Yeah. And so if you
even layer twos are an admission of this by splitting the network into multiple different networks.
Precisely. So you could see AO as essentially the hyperextension of the Ethereum scaling roadmap, the rollup centric scaling roadmap. Basically, with rollups, they're saying that you can, or it's better if you have multiple threads running at once, which, like, if you're from a computer science background, it's like saying it's better if you want to walk to use your legs to go forward. It's like, yes, of course. And so we made an environment where all of those rollups, well, for one, there can be as many as you want, because we made Arweave scale so that you can fit 2 to the power 256 bytes in a single transaction, if you so desire. And you can bundle your transactions together so that can be split into as many subchunks as you want, or subtransactions. Yeah, we made it so that you have this like arbitrarily scalable data layer. And then on top of that, you have an arbitrarily scalable number, like roll-up hosting environment, if you want to call it that. And then a built-in message passing relaying system so that all of those roll-ups can speak to each other just as if they are natively attached together. It's like all of the different cogs that are vaguely appearing in the in the Ethereum world, but made completely generic and open and composable and transparent together, basically. Like, stick together all of those blocks and what you get is a decentralized supercomputer. I guess the additional component is we roll everything up onto Arweave as well. So you actually do have shared security across those rollups. But it's the same kind of idea, just taken to its hyperextension.
So that execution is like distributed into, because basically I guess the problem, as I understand it, is that anybody can add data to Arweave, but there's no connective tissue in Arweave saying that this data that I'm adding is legitimate. Whereas for people who are familiar with something like Ethereum or Solana, if you send a transaction to a contract and it's an invalid transaction, if you try to transfer yourself a bunch of assets or act as if you have assets that you don't have, the contract, when you send that transaction to an RPC, can
Crumbs. We're losing you, Nicholas.
sign the transaction, send it off. Oh no, really?
We lost you. Yeah, but I think I was following broadly what you were saying, which is essentially that. Okay, I'll sit back to you and tell me if I was off. Yeah, and so the question is, well, when you use Ethereum, you have mutable state of contracts, and you can guard on input. You can say this is a valid interaction, this is not. And on Arweave, it's just a permanent data storage layer at its core. So you just add data to it, and that's all there is to it. Whereas with AO, I think it's exactly what I was inferring, but exactly what I think you were describing, which is that essentially it allows you to add those rules. So you have state transitions of individual computations. It's like every smart contract is a rollup, and then they can send messages to and from each other. And so it makes mutable state programs in a decentralized permanent storage environment.
Got it. And Tim, how do you think about how, I guess, AO, Arweave, this like permaweb stack kind of fits into the like crypto ecosystem landscape? Like, is this a successor to, Solana, Ethereum? Are there like specific types of applications that you think are just going to make more sense here, and there's a place for Solana, Ethereum? Like, how are you thinking about how this fits in?
I was with you until the last few words.
So ignore the last few words.
I mean, we see it as there's a ton of stuff that you couldn't do before you have AO. I mean, we looked around, like we would have used another smart contracting system if one existed that was capable of scaling to a large enough extent, and it just didn't fit our use case. But now we built it. It turns out it's useful for a ton of other stuff, things like an on-chain agent economy, right? So when you think about the financial system, there's, like the primitives, if you will, the games, the contracts that are being traded or exchanged. But that's really a very small part of the whole picture. Like when we think about markets and the economy, we think about the intelligence that moves those things. And previously in crypto and in DeFi, we decentralized the games. And that's super, super cool and very, very impressive, both creative idea and then execution to make it happen collectively across everyone involved. But the intelligence that makes those trades happen is off-chain, right? Like, and unverifiable. Just like the idea of a storage endowment run by a centralized group, you have to trust the money manager, or to bring it back to Bitcoin, you have to trust the Fed, right? To do their job properly. And so we see that you can actually now bring the intelligence of the agents that trade in the markets on chain and make them trustless as well, which is really super novel and weird. Like, yeah, totally different design space. So imagine you get like a, guy in his basement, or probably in high school or something. No one knows their name. They go by some anon pseudonym, and they make a really cool strategy. When if they launch it on AO and they make it trustless, so you just say like, there's no owner to this contract. No one else, I can never change the code. No one else can change the code. It just runs. Then if it does well, you can lend money to it in that trustless fashion that we're all used to with DeFi. Like, ultimately, I feel like if you have to know who the founder is, inherently there's a bunch of trust involved, and it's not really doing, not achieving the mission of the what would you say, the movement that is crypto, I guess. And this just applies that downstream to intelligence, which I think is like super, super cool. You get things like AI market makers. So yes, there's autonomous market makers. Those are like a very, very crude, simple strategy, but they were built so that they were low execution cost. Nice cat. Yeah, they were built so they're low execution cost, whereas an AIMM, like, you don't find normal traditional market makers running the same strategy as Uniswap. That's crazy, right? But you can take that logic and that intelligence and you can put it on chain now and make it trustless in execution. So I think that's just like one of 10 different areas that are completely opened up that, yeah, you can even entertain the idea of doing that on, as far as I'm aware, any other system. And so to like where Solana and Ethereum go, I mean, Solana is a very well engineered machine. It's really like they've, at least at an architecture level, they've got to pretty close to the archetype of the global shared memory machine. It's just a case of whether we need global shared memory. Like, it seems very obvious from the TradFi world, it works. Like, this conversation we're having right now is happening because of message passing, not global shared memory. And we've tried to basically build the alternate that maximizes on that, on that different vertical, essentially, in the different spot or niche in the design space.
I guess one other thing that distinguishes blockchains and crypto projects, aside from just their technical elements, is the kind of cultural associations that they have. So if people want to be involved in the We've Seen, where are people hanging out? Where is there a cultural Schelling point? Are there multiple? How do we join the community?
Multiple. Actually,
do you have meme coins? Are there meme coins, Sam?
I was just about to, if you go back to that one, there's dum-dums. That's an atomic asset profile picture collection. Those are all the elephants you met on Twitter the other day. But also, like, a new Schelling point in the ecosystem is also Llamaland. You would just log in, hang out, add new bots and stuff, and chat. It's pretty neat. However, you're on the waiting list. I could show you around if you want. Yeah,
I'll be back.
There's those places.
In 12 hours, I'll be back, so we can.
Okay, nice.
You should give me a tour. Yeah.
Yeah, and then also Bazaar, that site you were just on, it's got to like, okay, this isn't saying much nowadays, but about 1,300 yesterday monthly active users, which is actually, daily active users, which is higher than OpenSea. So it was, like, as far as I'm aware, the most used NFT marketplace in crypto last few days, which is pretty neat. But in fairness, OpenSea volume is down 99%. So yeah, it's not what it was in 21, but it's still pretty cool.
Got it. Yeah, Sam, this has been great. I think there's just like a whole rabbit hole that I think we all need to just go dive into. So what's the, consumer founders listening to this, or even just, consumer crypto enthusiasts listening to this, where's the best place for them to go if they either, are interested in building on AO, which I think is still in testnet, right?
It's testnet, but people use it like it's prod.
Okay.
We call it testnet because we want to be conservative, but there's a bunch of capital already moving around it, and we treat it very seriously. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So AO is ready to be built on.
Yeah. And if you want to find out more, just go to ao.arweave.net, and it has all the information. It's also arweave.org. Actually, we want to move that over to an ARNS name, but there's a bunch of different community sites. Frankly, if you just Google Arweave, you'll find everything you want.
Amazing. Sam, thanks so much for joining us. This is great. I'm gonna need to listen to this a few more times to fully grok the conversation. But Nicholas, thank you for being our technical support team here.
Of course. Thanks for having me on.
See you, man.
Thanks so much.
See you.
Oh.
Pretty
Nice.
sick. A whole other ecosystem to explore. So many things going on.
Honestly,
Totally.
AO is kind of completely flown under the radar for me.
Yeah, I think there's a whole discussion to be had here about comparing to something like ordinals or inscriptions, any of these inscriptions, or especially the Bitcoin ones where more data is stored on Bitcoin and there's like an indexer that makes sense of it, like all the ordinals wallets and runes, etc. It sounds like AO is maybe a kind of solution that decentralizes that so that you're not so dependent on like, it would be, the ordinals scheme. It's like, if your ordinals wallet, it would be like if MetaMask had its own index of what's going on. And if they screw up, maybe you like send your ordinals to the wrong wallet. Whereas AO, it sounds like, is a decentralized layer for that kind of execution on top of the raw data that's on Arweave in a similar way to the way ordinals data is on the Bitcoin blockchain. And then these indexers are making sense of it. So I think there's some things to think about and learn about there.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, Peace, maybe we do our next drop on AO after this upcoming one.
I'm down. I got to get a new seed phrase though, because I just shared mine with the world.
I know. You should just put a couple bucks in there and see how quickly it gets swiped.
Not a bad idea. It's a good scavenger hunt.
Good scavenger hunt. Okay, sick. Let's go to Farcaster marketing. So I mean this has been a constant ongoing debate. I think even pre-raise, but especially post-raise, where people are kind of wondering where the justification for this $1 billion valuation came from. And really, I think Dan has kind of like consistently taken this position that, Farcaster, I don't think necessarily that it doesn't need marketing at some future state, but it's largely not in the place yet where, he feels there's enough of a value prop to justify, him going out and marketing this to people that aren't already here, or kind of like the next concentric circle, of users. And yeah, Nicholas, I know we were working together, co-working this week, and you were kind of trying to tease this apart and make sense of this. So kind of curious, I have some thoughts on this position, but curious what you've been thinking about.
Yeah, I don't know if so two things. One, in that page you're looking at right now, Piece, the reply to Joe there covers Dan's explanation of what the basis of the $1 billion valuation fundraise that they announced a few months ago was. The 3 points there. It's a bet on the team and the public work to date, and they're focused on growing with crypto, creating cozy corners, and getting more developer Legos out there for devs who want to build stuff with a 10-year horizon for building. So this is not your maybe more common consumer crypto oriented play where trying to sort of nail epic growth very, very quickly. Instead, Farcaster has been building for 3, maybe even 4, almost 4 years now. I'm not sure the exact numbers, but around 3 years, and very consistently focused on Farcaster, not distracted by all the different metas that have come and gone in that period of time. Although increasingly, because sort of after having gone public and evolving beyond the invite only stage, there has been a lot more token activity, people dropping lots of kinds of tokens, most recently Moxie, which I think we'll get to talking to in a little bit. So there's a lot of activity, but I think engagement, people are sensing that engagement is down. Also recently in the like counts that they display inside of Warpcast, they've started not displaying likes from low quality casters, low quality Farcasters by the Merkle team's estimation. So like counts fell quite a bit, but the same was not applied to the follower counts. So if you look at someone's follower counts compared to their like counts, it seems like a discrepancy. I don't know if Piece you can find, there's like a Dune dash for activity that I think Ilemi from Dune set up, showing activity. I don't have any strong like quantified numbers on this right now, but there is a feeling that activity is down, at least anecdotally, as a user of the thing. Yeah. So the subject of marketing has come up more and more about like how do we get activity here? And yeah, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this.
I mean, I very much agree with Dan. Like, I think, me being someone who's very, very deep in in crypto and has, a pretty strong social graph in crypto and is, really only kind of a partial passive user, I would say, of Farcaster at this point, largely because of that the activities dropped off. Like I think the thing for them to focus on is like what is the feature set, what are the kind of novel experiences that they could build that it's going to get me to be more active there. Or I think largely like Solana, your average Solana person who doesn't spend a lot of time in like the ETH ecosystem, they're not even on Farcaster, right? So the idea of, and it's not a marketing problem, right? It's not because like the story is not getting out or they don't understand the value prop. I think it's just largely uncompelling to your non kind of hardcore decentralization interested kind of Ethereum developer archetype. So I think very much I agree with Dan's position. I think I don't even know if I'd say that I think Grow with Crypto makes sense if you're actually capturing broad usage and mindshare of the crypto community, and I don't even think they're there yet. So I don't know. I'd kind of like them to take some kind of weird or wilder swings than just kind of this like iterative kind of continuation of, I don't know, kind of like iterative feature set that they're just kind of building out. But yeah, I think largely.
Yeah, I think, I mean, there is some Solana activity. Mert is over there, pretty active. There, it's just not clear. I think the cast actions are pretty cool. So like on a kind of tweet on a Farcaster cast, you can now add any actions. This gives like a new affordance for developers to start building additional stuff. The frames are still interesting and being used heavily in the Moxie project. We'll talk about it in a little bit. But I think Dan's position is if retention isn't there, then there's no reason to tell new people to use the protocol, and to get retention there, I think they seem to think that building more tools out for developers is the main way to get there right now. I'm not sure that I agree. Totally. I think there's lots of people who have seen their reach really hit hard on Twitter, or who have never had super popular Twitter accounts, and the emergence of a new protocol is always an opportunity, or a new platform, social media platform is always a new opportunity for creators to grow faster than they might on existing entrenched networks. So I think there's still ways that people who are not seeing the reach they used to have or have never been that successful on Twitter could find Farcaster to be an interesting home, but TBD.
I think that's just kind of a weak. I think the ability to start your kind of social reputation from scratch is kind of a weak value prop, and I don't think your average person is just looking. You do? They're looking for a new Twitter to go. I mean,
that is exactly what TikTok is. TikTok has a dope as hell discovery algorithm. And I know so many people who just use it because they posted something that immediately got like 5,000 views. And they're like, oh, I'm just going to keep posting here.
Sure. But they also like to find an entire, new genre of media consumption and creation.
But they strayed away from the strict follow model and essentially everyone has done this. Reddit, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, everybody's done this now, but TikTok was the most aggressive about not really paying too much attention to who you're following. Farcaster or Warpcast is moving in this direction a little bit too, but
I don't think that, I guess my point is that I think that's a very important component of any new consumer social network, but I don't think that as a value prop in the absence of anything else new and novel and interesting is enough.
Well, it needs to be felt, not marketed.
Yeah.
For sure. But okay, I don't know. I was watching advertisements. I'm interested in marketing. And there was some really good ones that I found. One was snowball.com, and like their whole ad was like, I don't know, these dudes and a couple ladies in an office talking about the hundreds of thousands of people who email them every day and really great shit. Anyway, so I'm on their the domain at least from 2002, and I love this. They've got monthly unique visitors, registered users, paying subscribers right on their front door, quarterly page views, not a stat we hear enough. But anyway, so Dan, if you're listening, I think getting some of these stats on the homepage is gonna make Farcaster users really comfortable.
Quarterly page views is the missing piece.
Yeah, definitely.
That's the missing piece. Okay,
I think
let's jump to distribution. Let's just jump to distribution because we're already screwed.
We'll go.
I think we got a bunch of worthy topics here. So yeah, I think this distribution conversation is a good continuation of the wedge conversation that we had last week. So last week we talked. If you weren't listening, we talked about wedges and really just like the importance of having a well-defined target audience that you can go own and uniquely serve, kind of as a a ladder towards this bigger market that you're probably planning on going after. And I think Alana dropped a good thread this week that just really highlights some of the like tactical things that projects have historically done to really get distribution or use the distribution channel into these initial wedges. So I think worth reading and scrolling through. I think kind of two categories that like jumped out to me that people kind of consistently use was one, going and meeting your target users where they are. So that was Portnoy of Barstool was like standing on street corners of Boston for his like Boston focused sports magazine. PayPal got into the eBay checkout flow. Blackbird, got into restaurants. Tinder actually went to school campuses and was like matching. They would go to like sororities, tell them the fraternity signed up, and then they'd go to the fraternity and tell them the sorority signed up. So just these really like go to where your users are, kind of grassroots, meet them where they are approaches. And then the second one that had a handful of projects that used was kind of this like more kind of spray and pray approach where they created viral content that was kind of broadly appealing that, naturally some, their kind of target personas would kind of stumble across. So I think blend tech, like what can be blended. I forget what the content was called, but they're just blending a bunch of shit. Will it blend?
That's a great question.
Will it blend was sick. Michelin restaurant guide. Twitter projected like their news feed onto, South by Southwest kind of screens. So a bunch of these more like, scream from the rooftop, talk why your thing's interesting, and hope some of your target audience sees it. So anyways, like good thread. I think also reminded me, I haven't talked much about my time at Hopper. So early employee there, kind of helped scale it to 10 million monthly active users, scaled the company to like 500 people, and something we did in the very, very early days of Hopper. Initially, it started out as like a travel search engine, but we're capturing a ton of flight data, had a really strong data science team. And then at some point realized that we could predict flight prices, which, felt interesting. Weren't really sure if there was like a ton of consumer demand for it. So we went out and just got a bunch of press around the upcoming Thanksgiving for a few target destinations and just got press out saying how we could predict flight prices basically. And then that just drove an insane amount of traffic to our site from people looking to, book flights or put in their destinations or their travel dates. And, they couldn't, but it told us everything we needed to know that there was like a ton of consumer demand there. And, we pivoted the entire company around becoming like a prediction-based flight booking product after that. So, a bunch of stuff to think about here for.
I didn't even know you have a history in prediction.
I've been predicting for years, man. Yeah.
It all makes sense.
Actually, maybe the last thing to touch on here is just the Uniswap Kid Super collab, which I think is really smart by them. I think I just have so much conviction that like crypto is just inherently really fucking cool, and we just have been very bad at telling stories that make it accessible and make mainstream audiences realize how cool it is. And I think Uniswap collabing with Kid Super, I think the video really like humanizes Hayden and the Uniswap protocol, and hopefully will make some kind of headway towards attracting new groups of users who realize that crypto actually is cool and not this cringe thing that I think many of them think it is.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised to see Hayden popping out and wanting to be so associated with the brand of Uniswap, like by face. Actually, it's interesting shift.
I think you need to. You just need to.
And they're perfect together. Like it's the perfect team up. Like
it was good. They did a really good job with it. So anyways, got me thinking about who we should be collabing with.
Someone should shoot a movie with those two and like Vitalik and I don't know who else. Someone else. Okay, Peace. Let's jump to we're missing the fuck. So what is Peace doing on chain? Oh, okay. You don't want to financialize the web? We're gonna do that. We just talked about that, eh? No,
we're jumping to you.
Oh, we're jumping to me.
Yeah.
You kidding me? Oh,
or we can skip past you too.
What the fuck is Peace doing on chain?
You can't skip me, man. I'm freaking going.
I don't want to, man.
Okay.
This whole show should be you, as far as I'm concerned.
No. I don't have that much to talk about, unfortunately. But okay, if you are watching, you should be on live.seedclubxyz, and you should click your username or your PFP, whatever. It'll take you to your little profile section, and whatever you're logged in with, you'll find there. You can input your ordinals address, your Solana address, or another ETH address. Just copy paste your address in there so we know who you are and what kind of stuff you're doing on chain. Because we're coming to the mother chain.
You've got
Internet Explorers.
That's right, baby. It's Bitcoin, and we're coming for them. So yeah, we've got a 10K collection. That's a collaboration with Gremlins 2 movie, a friend of mine that I met on the internet. You should follow him. He's super fun, funny guy, great taste, and he makes really fun art using comfy AI and collage and all sorts of different interesting stuff. I think I reached out to him when I saw Thumbs Up Dog. Oh, here we go. Which is a collection that's still in the works. And I don't know, I'm just really enthusiastic about collage. And we've cooked up something that we've managed to fit on the Bitcoin blockchain thanks to the help of Genesis Ordinals. And so in the coming weeks, you'll hear us be really loud about that. But you should be on the site now, sharing your address so that we can put you on the different phases for minting. Because, yeah, we want fans of art, fans of tokens, and people who like Bitcoin.
What's it called? What's the collection called?
It's called Internet Explorers.
Awesome.
You're not.
It looks sick. We've scrolled through, I don't know, maybe 9,000 of the 10,000, and there's some absolute bangers in there. So I can't wait for a new PFP.
I'm excited. So it's like we've been doing all these test generations, but we're doing recursive submodules, baby. So all the traits will be inscribed individually on Bitcoin, and then they'll be randomly generated with scripts when you go to inscribe yours. So we won't even know the finals until they're there, and I can't wait. We've got 195 traits and a million blocks to go, baby.
Let's go.
Awesome.
All right, Peace. I now see why you're confused, because I just flew over financialization is the wedge. So apologies for that. So let's jump back up to that one quickly. Because I'm curious on both your perspectives on this, because I think it's kind of like a polarizing idea often. But really, like, yeah, what I was kind of tweeting here was just about my conviction that kind of the first layer, the first group of killer crypto applications are all going to be, financial applications or speculative applications at their core. I really just think that the ability to, financialize or speculate on anything is the most like tangible, obvious use case of blockchains, and where like kind of all the green space opportunity is. So I think, lots of good reasons to be excited by the future of like identity on blockchains, the future of social on blockchains. But I think starting there without, leaning into the like true kind of unlocks and differentiated experiences that financialization and speculation offers just often feels like, experiences that are just worse than Web2 experiences, because largely our normal friends aren't here. So I think like the thing that's going to get us to the place where, on-chain identity is actually this kind of broadly interesting thing, or, composable socials is this broadly interesting thing, is through, financial and speculative applications, just bringing more and more people on chain and kind of teaching them the power of, digital ownership and digital asset ownership. But yeah, curious if that, like, does that resonate with you guys, or do you have a different perspective?
Yeah, it's easier to predict the present than the future, right? This is already where we live. Everybody's here primarily for the financial opportunities, and the big networks are the blockchain networks, and the biggest applications are all financial. So yeah, this is already the the state of things. One question, I mean, comparing to the Farcaster discussion we had earlier, for example, is maybe are there networks that are more what we might consider traditional consumer applications or social media, for example, where if they hold off on financializing the core primitive, that actually builds maybe a healthier community for the long run. So there are going to be lots of like little apps, applications, crypto apps, what might be called consumer crypto typically, that come and go. But maybe the long-lived consumer crypto applications are actually things that are really slow burn to get there, like Farcaster is demonstrating.
Well, I think even what you know, like the inflection points of Farcaster adoption and usage so far have been, it's been degen, it's been, you know, financial applications, speculative applications emerging in frames. And I think like as those disappear and you kind of strip away that kind of new experience, and it just feels more and more like Twitter with less people there, that's where it kind of falls off, right? So yeah.
TBD. I mean, there's also, anytime you have any kind of financial opportunity, it also does bring in a lot of people who are kind of mercenary. So can have a lot of activity, but ultimately it's kind of spiky and often dissipates. Sure. So it's but certainly, I mean, what blockchains make easy, blockchains make all video game points into potentially carrying real value. And so they naturally lend themselves to tokenization of all different kinds. So yeah, for sure. Tokens are one of the killer apps so far of blockchains.
I mean, that's the other thing is just it's an impossible thing to parse. Or like as soon as you start asking these questions, you find yourself like deep in the dredges of like a philosophical conversation about like identity and money and all these things, and it's like they're not separate. Pretty much the value of every traditional web application is rooted in finance or a marketplace or making money or monetizing content. And there are the bygone effects of culture and identity creation and subculture creation. But all those are like actually secondary to the very real economic activity that facilitated it.
Yeah, I think even, you know, thinking to our Weave AO conversation, like the concept that, you know, data can exist for 200 years, it's decentralized, it's, you know, it sounds great, but it's going to probably be some like insane AI agent powered financial experience that really opens people's eyes up to AO, gets them to bridge over there, gets them onboarded into that community. And then, you know, that's a compelling value prop to like enrich your experience, the 200-year thing, but it's probably not enough to get people to broadly adopt it. Okay, cool. Let's jump to Moxie.
I mean, but it is interesting. So there's a YouTube uploader that I really love, Sounds of Dawn, and I was trolling my way through archive.org and I found someone uploading in the exact same style, exact same content style from years ago, and realized that they entirely stopped. And now there's this channel, Sounds of Dawn, on YouTube, which exists because this person was archiving stuff with zero incentives. And he's like, well, I'm going to go to YouTube where at least my views are going to be monetized. I refuse to believe that transition had nothing to do with finance, and yet it is entirely centered around art and like new age music. So and that's some dubious speculation because I'm looking at edit styles, but yeah, I don't know. It just is what it is. Culture is a side effect.
Agreed. All right, Nicholas, let's move to Moxie. It's been this thing that's emerging on Farcaster. I don't think anyone actually knows what's going on. I think it has hints of just being another version of the tokenizing people and, you know, their Farcaster engagement. But yeah, maybe there's something more interesting.
Yeah, new project from the Airstack team. It has been a little bit difficult to understand, quite verbose, a lot of the explanations. So I think people are still catching up, but it's live now and people are playing with it. I haven't played with it personally. I don't think I've touched anything that interacts with it yet, but essentially they're airdropping these Moxie tokens to people. Moxie daily rewards are distributed based on essentially your cast engagement. So if you post things that get engaged with, you receive Moxie rewards, and the amount of Moxie rewards depends on the sort of credit score of the people who are liking or recasting or interacting with your comments. So the idea is to get people who have high reputation to pay attention to what they're engaging with and then reward tokens on the basis of that. They're distributing the Moxie tokens in a lot of different ways, but one of them is these daily rewards. If you have a Moxie Pass, which is an NFT that you can only mint.
No, I just know he's going to say you can only mint it from a
Frame.
Farcaster frame. Yeah, it's
I
got to
know.
be.
Yeah, I know he's going to say frame. So let's just assume he's saying frame. So yeah, I think it's kind of a. Honestly, I haven't spent enough time in it, but there's also fan tokens. I think it's largely similar to Scoop or Wildcard or kind of.
Are we back here?
These.
Oh yeah,
you're back. You're gonna
Okay,
say
good.
frame.
Yeah, so you can only buy it inside frame.
let's go.
So it's very FC native. You got to be an FC user, and then you can purchase. There's like auctions for fan tokens. There's fan tokens for every channel and every caster, or at least ultimately there will be, as well as a fan token for the Farcaster network itself. So there's like some kind of auction mechanism that happens inside of a frame, and once the auction is complete, you get your tokens, and then they exist on a bonding curve, so people can trade against the bonding curve exclusively inside these Moxie contracts. So it has a lot of things that are similar to other projects that have been out there, but it's trying to be, I think, a little bit more composable, and that its orientation is to use.
It's like a headless version of.
There is a front end to it on the Moxie Airstack website that you can check out. But I guess the idea is to try to incentivize quality content on Farcaster and really plug in deeply with the Farcaster architecture and let other people sort of interact with it. So yeah, people are excited about this week. We'll see if that continues.
Cool. Okay, let's go to Make Now Meme because this is a fun one. You guys see this?
Yes. Although now dead, right?
No, it's back. It's back. So Make Now Meme is a new token launchpad that emerged this week, where that basically allows you to launch a meme coin directly from a tweet. So if you tweet ticker, description, and then tag Make Now Meme, it automatically launches a token, in the pump.fund mechanic. So bonding curve, it graduates at some point. I think what's cool about it and what made it go a little wild is obviously that the token launching gets inserted into the place where all the attention and social context lives. So when like the founder of Nansen was one of the early ones to launch, pumped like a $5 million valuation, launched IQ, I think, obviously, large social following, high reputation, launching it directly from his Twitter account, good reason to think it's something to go speculate on. I think Radium also launched one. So been kind of fun to see. I think it's been out for a few days. Twitter account got suspended for maybe a day. I think it's now back. I think they've done like 60K in fees, taking 1% maybe. So pretty decent number of volume and usage so far. But I don't, kind of hard to see this.
I'm curious what makes this substantially more interesting to you than Moxie, for example. If you think Moxie is just like a bunch of other stuff that's been done already, isn't this basically just pump.fun but with a Twitter plugin?
Yeah, but this is just. Oh yeah. I mean, I just like new experiments around meme coins and speculation and cultural assets, and I think inserting pump.fun requires people to go and be there and hang out on that site, and I think inserting the launching into the
distribution that excites you
directly into the distribution channel, I think is interesting. So I don't have any confidence that this is like a new thing that's going to be the new way to launch meme coins. I just think it's a hilarious experiment to run. And I mean, they probably built this thing in a day. Already made 60K in revenue. Millions of dollars of volume on tokens that have been launched there. So just build cool shit and see what happens.
Mm-hmm. And reinstate it on Twitter. So seems like viable enough, maybe something to be repeated in the future.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty damn cool. Like Twitter post to token launch is crazy.
Right.
If it's a good enough meme. Anyway, interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. Okay, let's jump to B2C2C. So yeah, just a couple, I think, tweets this week. One from Jared that just kind of highlighted crypto's unique ability to facilitate consumer to consumer experiences in businesses. I think Hasib also had a good tweet just kind of highlighting the differences between, some like hyped token that is largely just some top-down thing versus something that's, emerged into a real community where, users are largely serving other users. Just kind of like this framing of, I think, consumer to consumer, or like really like the big opportunity in crypto being, B to C to C, and creating, contexts where, or worlds, or, kind of social token networks where, you're really empowering users to get in there and, have fun and serve themselves and find a sense of belonging and be around, like-minded people and largely just have, serve themselves in that world versus kind of some, central team just needing to kind of provide all the value. So I think just a cool framing, and I think help contextualize some of the opportunities out there.
No, sweetie, we have P2P at home.
I think it's funny how different, because obviously you could call a lot of Web2 marketplaces, peer to peer, but it's really like peer to platform to peer, and that platform is big and loud and extractive. And I think it truly just being, peer to peer on blockchain through kind of, crypto native experiences feels meaningfully different.
Big time.
Yeah, I guess what we haven't seen or I'm curious what differentiates this from like say the NFT craze, where there's like a central party issuing the tokens in the first place, and then they're hoping that the community is like trading it amongst themselves. I wonder.
Well, I think it more just highlights the opportunity here is to build cults, right? Build communities, build environments where people are showing up every day and socializing and serving each other. I think largely where a lot of these projects do fall down is that never actually happens or emerges, and it just kind of stays this group of people who are just sitting there and waiting to be served by people. So I think, yeah, just the importance to build context that people want to hang out within, build social contexts that are meaningful and matter, create culture that people want to, remix and exist within. And also just like how hard that is and how intentional you have to be with it. It isn't just continuing to, tweet or build, product experiences that get you there. We're kind of out of time.
We're out of time. One lightning round. Let's do one, and we gotta bust up out of here.
I'm so curious. What's Smort? We're missing Smort.
So
Smart's cool. You're just gonna have to read my newsletter. It's gonna be in there.
All right.
Oh, this is cool. So this is actually built by Backseats, who's an internet buddy of mine,
Friend of the show,
Backseats. Yeah, and basically, I've long wanted to just have good crypto art on my TV and haven't been able to, and they've built the product that makes that very easy. So I recommend going to check out White Walls.
Backseat's so prolific.
Yeah, it's built a lot of shit. Okay, sick. That's it for us. Appreciate everyone that hung out. Thanks, Sam, for jumping on. If you want to learn about Smart, things we're excited by, read my newsletter. I'll be dropping minutes after this because I'm heading to a cottage soon.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on the episode today. Thanks for hanging. Peace, Josh.
Let's
Good
go.
chat.
Oh yeah, big
right.
time. See you next time.
Peace, fellas.
You guys.
Internet Explorers.